Alrighty. Welcome back to Nick Lenz's Comic Corner Classics, Classics, and Non-Classics. This is episode number 1902 and Doubleshot number 1796. Now I have some Green Arrow stuff here. There's one trade here plus some individual issues. Now, to my knowledge, there is no explanation of why these issues are not in trade. Yes, I have never heard of the reason for it. It just these issues are simply just not in trade for some reason. First up, we're starting out with Green Arrow, Volume 3, number 23. This issue was noteworthy for the return of Count Vertigo to the book. First time since 1983. So, yes, first time in 20 years he's appeared in the Green Arrow comic book. Also, the first time in 20 years he actually has fought Green Arrow. This is basically one last time I fight him. By the way, the interior art of this book is still Phil Holster, and I'm going to review a little more of his issues here. Yeah, this input is basically one last fight between the two of them, and after this, nothing for the rest of the continuity until the Flash review would happen. Yes, the story itself is actually really good. I love the fight between the two of them. It just one-on-one, and of course, kind of almost humiliates him mentally. But after this, Green Arrow will not fight Count Vertigo again for 10 years. Well, that's when Jeff Lemire is in the book. This is after a couple years after New 52 started, where he found him again, except he's got a completely different redesign. And also, he changed his last name. Apparently, Vertigo is not his legal last name anymore. It's Zer, I think his name is. Where he was a recurring villain in Jeff Lemire's run. And then after that, he popped up in a couple issues of Justice League. Then he popped up again in Green Arrow for a handful of issues during the Rebirth run. And I think his most recent appearance today was actually in Checkmate. Yeah, I forgot to mention that for Checkmate. He worked with Merlin the Archer when he fought Green Arrow on a space station. Yep. But the Green Arrow issue, this issue is really good. In case you're curious, who is the writer for this issue? It is Scott Beatty. Yeah, the story is called A Vertigo Treatment. It's just really good here. And also, the fact that he actually was working for Bones at this point in time. So, why not? Now, 2325 is a crossover with Green Lantern. Green Lantern Volume 3, issues 162 to 164. Fun fact with those issues, these were the last 3 issues of Joe Winnick's run for Green Lantern. Because right after he wrapped up that run there, he got moved over to Green Arrow. And the Green Lantern issues are Joe Winnick's issues. The Green Arrow issues, part of this crossover is known as Black Circle Urban Knights. It's a 6-part story. And this is another thing not in trade for some reason. I do not know why. Now, the issues themselves, the Green Arrow issues, are done by Ben Rabb. He writes all 3 of these issues. And you probably would think, like, did he write any more issues for Green Arrow that are simply not in trade for some stupid reason? Oh yeah, and Charlie Eller did a guest star writer artwork for this one. In the case of Green Arrow, aside from these 3 issues here, he had a pretty lengthy run on Green Lantern. As a matter of fact, he took over right after Joe Winnick left the book. Yep, he was actually one of the last writers in the book, just for a book that got relaunched. Yes, so it's odd. It's like, okay, you bring Ben Rabb here for this crossover, and then don't much with him at all. Yep. Now, in this book, basically, we have it where Green Lantern, by the way, the Green Lantern at this point in time is actually Kyle Rayner. He meets up with Oliver Queen, despite the fact when he appeared in the Brad Militer issues, they got along perfectly fine. Here, they're basically they're very much argumentative, where he basically points out, though, that there's only one Green Lantern I recognize, and that's Hal Jordan, my best friend. And that apparently ticked off, Kyle Rayner, and takes Oliver's own son to basically tell him to grow up. Yep, And a lot of the time of the story, this is even basically. I'm glad the fact that Joe Wenck didn't contradict this in his own issues for Green Lantern. These two have tendency not to be on the same page a lot of the time. And this was technically the first time they've done a team story with these two characters. Now, Kyle Rayner has teamed up with a Green Arrow before. Now Oliver Queen would actually Carter Hawk. So for him, this is his second ever crossover with Green Arrow. He actually did previously with the previous line for the series. Yes. And here's a strange fun fact about the Green Lantern book. Unlike Green Arrow, which actually ended in 1998 and was brought back in 2001, this book still kept going under Kyle Rayner until issue 183. Yep. So the whole thing is about this Black Circle thing. They're investigating it, and then it leads to stuff in Green Lantern, where at the end of the second part, we get used to Amin Sor's son in this story. Yep, his son gets introduced in this story. Abin Sur, yes. Yeah, Abin Sur is, well, the Green Lantern who gave Kyle Rayner his ring. And basically, this crossover introductions to his son, who is evil. Yes, he is evil. For some reason, because, well, he is, the best to describe it is that he's bitter against his father for abandoning him as mother for being a Green Lantern. Yes, and for some reason, even after this crossover out, he popped up for, well, his group, the Black Circle, appeared a few more times in Green Lantern. That was simply it. But here's the thing about Abin Sur's son. He's dead. Yeah, he got killed off during the Alpha Lantern story. He got killed off in the opening issue. Yeah, I'm not really sure. Now, of course, they talk about, oh yeah, we have to basically change out the Book of Oa. Now, I should point out, though, that the Green Lantern Corps was not brought back at this point in time. Because at the time when Kyle Rayner was Green Lantern in the Green Lantern book, he was the sole Green Lantern in the universe. Yes. There was a brief time to revive the group in the 90s after Hal Jordan pretty much massacred the whole Corps. That's when he was Parallax. Now, I do enjoy this story for what it is. I do like the banter. And it's just so interesting. Of course, at one point, Connor, who's telling his own father, take a vacation. Yes, his father to tell a vacation. Like, wow. I'm kind of like, who's the father and who's the son now? Yeah, but this story, it's really good. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I think the artwork is fantastic. Here's some artwork by Charlie Allard. Go away, please. No, thank you. Like, here's some artwork for you. It's really, really good. Yep. Plus, basically had it where it's like Green Lantern with Green Arrow. It's kind of like the old thing goes like, oh, partners who don't get along. And here's this artwork from Green Lantern, which is really, really good. My gosh, it's not terrible artwork. It's actually real. I enjoy this artwork. Oh, if you're curious though, how is Amon Sur introduced? Well, he's introduced at the end of issue 162, and well, yep, there he is. And at the time, he points out though that Amon Sur, well, you can't be Amon Sur. He's like, you are correct. I am not Amon Sur. I'm Amon Sur, his son. So it turns out that Amon Sur did not marry. He actually was just dating his son's mother. Yep. And the thing is, even after this crossover wrapped up, like in the case of Black Circle, he didn't really appear a lot. Like, he appeared throughout so many issues of the Green Lantern book. Appeared heavily in Green Lantern Volume 4 before he got killed off. He was brought back as a Black Lantern. And you might be curious, though. Did he appear post-crisis, you might ask? Well, no, he didn't. As for why in the world he has not popped up yet, I don't really know, really. But it's an excellent crossover overall. Now, in the case of the issues themselves, 22, 9 out of 10. The three-parter, also 9 out of 10. Really good stuff here. All right, next up it is Green Arrow Straight Shooter, which contains issues of Green Lantern on the Green Arrow Volume 3, issues 26 31. Of course, Joe Wenning officially, this is actually the start of his epic run he does in the book, which he basically is the main writer for this book up until the book's conclusion. Excuse me. But he doesn't do all the issues. No, he doesn't. As for why in the world he doesn't, I have no idea. And Matt Wagner still does the covers for this series, which is so awesome. Now, apparently Green Lantern 120, that was actually the first book he worked on in DC. But in the case of these Green Arrow issues, he may have started with issue 26, and these issues he skipped throughout his run. He skipped 51. There's one. And that's it. He skipped only one issue. He skipped two issues. He didn't do 33 either. Nope, he didn't. Do not know why he skipped two issues. It just, he didn't. But he was the last regular writer. He was only the, if you think about it, he was only the third regular writer in the book after Brad Mills did his one. Because first you had Kevin Smith, they had Brad Mills take over for one story, and then you have Joe Wenning pretty much the rest of the run. Now in this story arc here, we're introduced to Joanna, where basically have Green Arrow just being some bad guys, and then he runs into Jefferson Pierce, the Black Lightning. Yep. Who at this point in time was working for Lex Luthor, because Lex Luthor was President of the United States and he was the Secretary of Education. Which is important now, though, that apparently he actually had a really good job as Secretary of Education, where he's on data pointing out the pages of Outsiders. Well, my dad was Secretary of Education. Kids actually went to school. Probably just pointing out how awesome a job he did at that particular thing. So, then he introduces Green Arrow to his niece, Joanna Pierce, who, for some reason, when they brought this character back in the pages of Outsiders, I'll get some more of that. So, the story is they're investigating like various other things. With like, you have a cop basically who's trying to use this kind of force on a kid. Green Arrow stops him. He's like, I'm trying to do my job. Then do your job. Don't use it as a force. Yeah. So, I do appreciate Green Arrow basically is going to be quite honest of a person. Well, that is until he decides to have a one-night stand with his best friend's niece. I am not kidding about this. They have sex, despite the fact he's dating the Black Canary at this point in time, and then he meets up with later while he's injured hand and trying to shoot some arrows. He does admit to her that what they did together was a mistake. He basically did not. It was a mistake. He's seeing somebody. He does not want to go through that again. She's like, okay, fine. I'm recording an hour. And then long afterwards, she is murdered. Well, these issues are not only used to her, but also Constantine Trago, a assassin who basically is a recurring villain this run. Yep, who appeared for a couple issues of the Green Arrow and Black Canary series, which that was his last special appearance in comics before DC relaunch of 2011. Which, after that relaunch, he didn't pop up again until, after those two issues of Green Arrow and Black Canary, he didn't appear again until the final issue of Ben Percy's run for Green Arrow. Yeah. So, Green Arrow fights him, defeats him, and goes after the guy who actually hired him to basically kill Black Lightning's niece. And he does basically intimidate him. He goes to security, look like his brother, and then he's supposedly killed by a bolt of lightning. And it's theorized that Black Lightning was responsible for killing this guy. Yeah, that wasn't until when he was working on Outsiders. Yeah, it turns out, nope, he did not kill him. It turns out it was actually, I think was it Red Hood? No, it was actually Deathstroke who murdered this guy. Yes, freaking Deathstroke. And Green Arrow was actually informed of this in the pages of Outsiders by Red Hood. Yes, seriously. Also, for some strange reason, they referred to her as his daughter, despite the fact she's his niece. Yeah, I thought this was kind of weird. But for story arc of Joe and Egg's Run for Green Arrow, this is really good. I give this book a 9.5 out of 10. It's really damn good here. Yes. And it's interesting, though. First issue he does with the book is 26. We're introduced to Joanna. Yeah. Great woman here. Like, she gets killed off in issue 30. Yeah, gets killed off in issue 30, like roughly 4 issues after her debut. Yep. And the corpse is basically found in 31. I think she mentioned in flashback. Oh yeah, it appears as a corpse. And yeah, as for basically when the whole thing brought with Harry King, it's not until toward his run for Outsiders, just a few years later, that they finally resolved this plot thread for the storyline Pay As You Go, which was, I believe, it was like one of the last story arcs of the run. It was actually the penultimate story arc of Joe and Egg's Run for Outsiders, because he did a crossover with Checkmate just right after this one. Now, you might be thinking, okay, for Winnick, when he worked on Outsiders, did he work on this book while he was working on Green Arrow? Let's see. I think this book was already going on at this point in time. Yes, because this run started in 2003. That was the Green Arrow book. The Outsiders, which basically was a big run for him. Well, the first book obviously worked on was Green Lantern 129, which came out in October 2000. So his Green Arrow run started 3 years after that. But as for his Outsiders run, well, that started in 2003. So let's see. That was August 2003. So basically, around the same time. Yes. Yeah, as for when this run ended, which ended with issue 50. Well, his last issue was 49. On this book, anyways. Because 50 was not done by him. No, 50 was done by Chuck Dixon. Actually, it was Tony Bedard, but he didn't write the final issue. As for Green Arrow, well, he did the book until 75. Oop. No. So, yeah, they kind of both ended around the same time. Yeah, that's something quite interesting, though. They both these books both ended around the same period of time. But in the case of Outsiders, he actually left that book. Now you probably think, oh yeah, he also did this period of time do a run on Detective Comics. Yes, so basically on Green Arrow and Outsiders, he also did Batman. He did run a very good Batman. But I think like his first run he did, he did like the Josie Mac feature for Detective Comics. That was like probably the second comic he worked on. Yes. But as for his last comic he worked on, well, he also worked on Batwing. Then worked on well, if you think about it, like, well, the only run of his I've actually completed is his runs for Detective and Batman. And Batman and Robin. I've also got a review of his run for Batwing. His Catwoman run, his she did for Checkmate. Some pieces of the Outsiders series. And I believe that's it. Oh yeah, I did review some of the issues he did for Titans. Not all of them per se. I think it was like just the opening trade. Yeah, just the Titans Forever, which like the first 11 issues, which that's pretty much almost his whole run. But he didn't do issue 11. That was done by somebody else. That's Sean McKeever. Mm-hmm. It's interesting though that there was only like one book for this one, and to my knowledge, I never did any more of this one. So yeah, very few books I reviewed from Joe Winnick. I love you more from him. The guy is a good writer. It's just that basically, I know he does get some flack for some books he worked on, but that's not entirely his fault. That was basically his stuff his editor told him, like in the case of the Catwoman stuff. I know he got flack for that one, but the thing is, the other reason why he wrote it that way was because that's what the editors told him to do. So there's that. And by the way, his Catwoman run, but I think when he wrote that was one for Catwoman and Batwing, he left comics altogether. Right now he's doing children's books. Yet, Joe Winnick, a popular comic writer, is doing children's books. That's not a joke. It seriously is true. It's true. It's damn true. I mean, his last book he did for DC. Well, actually, he did make a return to DC recently with Superman Red and Blue. He did actually a story for that one. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was actually his return. In case you're curious, did he ever work at Marvel? Yes, he did. As a matter of fact, he worked on a few comic books. He worked on mostly two comics. He worked on Blink and Exiles. Blink I have reviewed. Great miniseries this one is. And he worked on the first 25 issues of Exiles. But that was it. That's all he did for Marvel. Mm-hmm. Oh, by the way, did you know he wrote the script for Batman and the Red Hood? Yes. Yes, he did. Yep. Well, it makes sense. He wrote the original story, so why the heck not? Yep. But yeah, it seems like when you think of his work for comics-wise, it seems like he spent a majority of his career at DC. That's what it seemed like anyways. Mm-hmm. But he doesn't do much nowadays, but I am planning on reviewing more stuff by him, so stay tuned for that. Okay, so that's a particular review. As my next review video is going to be, I think I'll do Is It Wrong? Terry Rose Dungeon. Okay, next video. Bye.